Let's kick things off with a true icon of personal music, the Sony Walkman. Released in 1979, the Walkman completely transformed how people experienced music. Before this little beauty, listening to your favorite tunes meant carrying a giant boombox or being tied to your stereo at home. But the Walkman? It was small, lightweight, and super portable. It came with those signature lightweight headphones, and you could suddenly take your music anywhere you wanted. Imagine heading to class or walking across campus with your favorite mixtape playing. Pure freedom. Now, here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't just about convenience. The Walkman gave us the chance to create our own personal soundtracks. You weren't limited to what was playing on the radio anymore. For college students, it was all about those personalized mixtapes from friends or even that special someone. You could control your vibe, whether it was getting hyped for an exam or winding down after a long study session. The Walkman sparked a revolution, paving the way for every portable music device we use today, from CD players to iPods and even our smartphones. This tiny gadget? It was a cultural game changer. Next up, we've got the Discman. Now, if you thought the Walkman was cool, the Discman took it up a notch when it hit the scene in 1984. This portable CD player allowed you to carry your entire CD collection with you, which felt like magic back then. Suddenly, every album you had meticulously collected could come with you, and it sounded amazing. But let's not forget, the struggle was real when it came to avoiding that dreaded CD skipping. Every bumper jolt would send your music into a scratchy frenzy. Oh, you had to walk gingerly with your Discman, no jogging with this thing. Yet, despite its quirks, college students loved it. I mean, what's better than sitting on the quad between classes with your Discman and CD wallet, swapping out albums? The Discman represented a huge step forward in portable music. It was sleek, it sounded great, and it allowed you to listen to music in pristine CD quality. The downside? You had to carry your CDs everywhere. But that was a small price to pay for having your favorite tunes at your fingertips. And now, one of the most iconic gadgets of all time, the Nintendo Game Boy. Released in 1989, this little handheld console became an obsession, not just for kids, but for college students too. I mean, how could you resist? You could play Tetris, Super Mario, and eventually Pokémon all from the comfort of your dorm room or while waiting for a lecture to start. It was the ultimate escape. For students, it wasn't just a way to pass the time. It was a social experience. Game Boys brought people together. You could trade games, swap tips, or even link up for multiplayer battles with the Game Boy Link cable. It was seriously cutting edge at the time, challenging friends to a high-score contest in Tetris. The blocks just kept falling faster, and the tension? And while the original screen was black and white, it didn't matter because the gameplay was just so addicting. The Game Boy changed how we saw handheld gaming forever. Portable, fun, and surprisingly durable, this thing could survive a fall down the stairs, no problem. It was the perfect way to distress after a long study session. Now let's talk about a gadget that wasn't just a game, it was a commitment. The Tamagotchi, released in 1997, was a virtual pet that college students and pretty much everyone became obsessed with. You had to feed it, play with it, and clean up after it, or, well, it wouldn't make it. Tamagotchi owners learned quickly that neglect meant disaster. Still remember the panic of hearing those beeps in the middle of class, knowing I had to feed my little digital pet or it was game over. It was oddly stressful, but in a fun way. Tamagotchis were a huge distraction, but honestly, they also gave you something to care for, even if it was just a bunch of pixels on a tiny screen. People would actually bond over how long they kept theirs alive or share stories of their pet's tragic demise. College students would have them on their keychains, ready for any emergency feeding. It was a fad that sparked friendships and, let's be real, a little bit of guilt if you were a bad digital pet owner.
Hit the bell icon to stay updated. Subscribe for the latest tech updates.
Before we had smartphones to do it all, there was the Palm Pilot. This gadget, launched in 1996, was a must-have for college students trying to keep their chaotic lives organized. It was the first personal digital assistant or PDA that could store contacts, schedule appointments, take notes, and keep you on track. Think of it as a proto-smartphone without all the bells and whistles. It might sound basic today, but back then, having all your important information in one place was revolutionary. No more piles of sticky notes or forgetting your class schedule. The Palm Pilot let you carry your brain in your pocket. And the best part? You got to use a stylus to write things down, which felt so futuristic. It wasn't flashy or fun like the Game Boy, but for students trying to balance a million things at once, the Palm Pilot was a lifesaver. Plus, it was a status symbol. If you had one of these bad boys, it meant you were serious about getting stuff done. Next on the list, zip disks. Now, this may not seem like a big deal now, but back in the 90s, storage space was a huge problem. Floppy disks could barely hold a few Word documents. That's where zip disks came in, offering a whopping 100 megabytes of storage. For college students working on massive research papers or multimedia projects, these were a lifesaver. These little disks were bulky, but compared to floppies, they were like magic. You could fit so much data on them. Sure, transferring files took a while, and the disks themselves were pricey, but they were worth it. Zip disks were pretty much essential if you had any big projects to turn in, and they were perfect for saving multiple drafts without worrying about space. Looking back, it's hard to imagine relying on physical storage for everything. But for students in the 90s, zip disks were a total game changer in the tech world. Ah, the infamous dial-up modem. If you were a college student in the 90s, this sound is probably burned into your memory. It was slow, loud, and interrupted every time someone picked up the phone, but it was your gateway to the internet. Back then, Wi-Fi was just a dream, so the dial-up modem was your only way to connect to this amazing new thing called the World Wide Web. Remember waiting what felt like forever just to check email or research a paper online. And don't even think about streaming anything, forget it. Web pages loaded at a snail's pace, and downloading a song could take hours. But despite the agonizing slowness, having internet access at all felt groundbreaking. For college students, the internet was still a bit of a novelty, but it quickly became essential. We relied on it for research, email, and even early chat rooms when you could finally get connected, that is.
Hit the bell icon to stay updated. Subscribe for the latest tech updates.
Next up is the digital camera. Before our smartphones doubled as cameras, early digital cameras were a big deal, especially for students wanting to capture those important college memories. While the first digital cameras were bulky, expensive, and had limited storage, they were still revolutionary. No more dealing with film or waiting for pictures to get developed. You could instantly see your photos on the little LCD screen and decide whether to keep or delete them. It may seem basic now, but at the time, it felt like sci-fi. For college students, digital cameras were a fun way to document parties, road trips, and campus events. You could share these moments with friends instantly, though back then, sharing meant passing the camera around. Social media wasn't a thing yet. Now let's talk about the MP3 player. More specifically, the iPod, which launched in 2001 and changed how we listen to music forever. Gone were the days of carrying around a pile of CDs. The iPod let you store thousands of songs on a tiny device that fit in your pocket. For college students, this was pure gold. Whether you were walking to class, studying, or working out, you could have all your favorite music right there with you. The iPod wasn't just a gadget, it was a status symbol. Everyone wanted one, and if you had those iconic white earbuds, people knew you were packing some serious music power. The ability to create your own playlists, shuffle songs, and carry so many albums at once was unheard of. Today, it seems like a no-brainer our phones can do all of that and more, but back then, the iPod was the ultimate way to experience music. And finally, the USB flash drive. In the early 2000s, these little drives changed everything when it came to storing and transferring files. Small, portable, and with tons of space compared to floppy disks and even zip disks. They quickly became the go-to storage device for college students. Whether it was essays, group projects, or presentations, the USB flash drive made it incredibly easy to transfer data between computers. Plus, they were practically indestructible. You could toss one in your backpack, drop it a few times, and it would still work perfectly. In a way, USB drives were a sneak peek at where storage was heading: portable, convenient, and designed to keep up with our fast-paced lives. Today, cloud storage has taken over, but back then, having a USB drive on your keychain meant you were prepared for anything.
Hit the bell icon to stay updated. Subscribe for the latest tech updates.